Hello and welcome to this very special episode of The After Party Behind the Mic. I'm your host, Edmund Manuel, joined by my ever lovely co-host.
What's up, everybody? This is Wilhelmina.
And today we have the absolute honor and pleasure to be joined by the voice of Mose from Borderlands 3, the ADR Director and writer of the English dub of Kimono Friends, the voice of Polly Bendelson from Cutie Pop 2 Double Date, ADR Director and voice of Adaptation in Arte, the one and only Marissa Lenti.
Hi, guys. Thanks for having me on.
So happy to have you on. Marissa works and has worked with a variety of fantastic entertainment studios and companies such as Media Blasters, Funimation, Sentai Filmworks, Rooster Teeth, Netflix, Discotech Media, among others. Marissa, we're ecstatic to have the opportunity to talk to you today. How are you doing tonight?
I'm doing good. Yeah, I got to take it easy today. Today's my day off, so it has been fantastic.
Yeah, you love to see that, especially during the holiday season when things can get really hectic.
Oh, yeah.
Wilhelmina, do you want to take it away with our first questions?
Yes, I would love to. So, one thing that I'm very, very curious about, I know that your first demo reel on your website is from 2014. I find that as us getting started in the industry, we are auditioning for so many different things. And I'm wondering if there were any voice work that you did prior that you maybe didn't put on like a reel. Maybe you don't usually list it on a resume. What kind of work, like voice work, did you do when you first got started and you're like, wow, I just want to voice act and I'll do anything?
So when I was getting started, I was still living in Boston, going to college and doing all of my voice work out of my bedroom. And I was primarily doing indie games, Newgrounds animations, and commercials that I got through pay-to-play sites. So like voices.com, voice123 kind of thing, because there was really not a local market. There was a studio, which is where I got that demo reel recorded with my first coach, Dorothy Gallagher. But there wasn't much in the way of local work. I was doing pretty much everything online. Oh gosh, I'm trying to remember the name of the first indie game I did. Sacred Earth was its name. It was an indie game, like an RPG style game. And I was really, really excited because I was one of, I think the three main characters are three sisters. And I was one of the sisters. And one of the other sisters was Rina-chan, which is a name that I recognized. I was like, that's Kira Buckland. Oh my God. And that was my very, very first VO gig. Once I decided to start doing it for my job. I did actually do a radio play years and years prior before I even thought I wanted to be a voice actor, just because I liked the webcomic that was being turned into a radio play. That was the Slightly Damned radio play. It's a webcomic that I really like, and I played the character Sakido years and years before I even decided that it's what I wanted to do for a living. So I've got that's kind of my background, my early work history, lots of indie games, and lots of weird little commercials. Like I did a commercial for Bible bed sheets. Rest on the word.
Bible bed sheets, rest on the word.
Bed sheets that had Bible verses printed on them. And I was like, if this is the kind of stuff that I'm going to be doing for the rest of my career, then voiceover is going to be a very interesting career. Lots of fun, interesting little tidbits like that kind of tucked away like 2014 was about when I got started. A little bit earlier, actually, maybe 2013, because 2014 is when I graduated college. And it was the last year of college when I really got started in voiceover.
Wow. Yeah, that's so interesting because your mention of indie games, I remember from the event that you did that you were very on top of the whole looking at indie games to find voice actors. So that's really interesting that you got started in a very similar way by doing indie games and indie productions.
I think a lot of actors in our generation do. You know, there's I kind of mentioned this in the event that you're talking about, but I think that you can pretty much sort voice actors into generations based on when they sort of get into the industry and then begin to rise to prominence. And every new generation of voice actors naturally kind of get magnetized to each other in the way that you guys have started this podcast.
Right.
And in the same way that a lot of my friends are voice actors who I would consider to be from quote unquote my generation. And it's just because the rising tide raises all ships sort of thing, the camaraderie thing. You end up doing a lot of productions together. You all become friends, and then you sort of lift each other up. You recommend each other all over the place. And because of that, I think that voice actors in similar generations usually start in similar ways. So I think a lot of people who are my age or who kind of got into the professional industry around the same time are pretty much all going to say that they got started with indie games or Newgrounds. That's kind of just where we all were and what we're all doing. The new generation, it definitely seems to be like still indie games, because I think indie games will continue to be a great place for voice actors to get started pretty much forever. But it used to not be an option for actors who are older than us. But for the new generation, I think it's going to continue to be indie games, and it's going to be YouTube animations rather than Newgrounds animations. I think we're going to see a lot more people doing, like, you know, those kids animations that you see, like the Minecraft style ones that always need voice actors. We're going to see a lot of like the next generation of big prominent voice actors get their start there. And it's so cool to see how it evolves. But it is important, you know, for those of us who don't want to get left behind, to keep our finger on the pulse of where we can go and find the newest generation, what they're doing, what kinds of productions they're in. And it is, yeah, it's very interesting to see how it sort of shakes out generation after generation. But that is, I believe, sort of the way of the land of the online voice acting space. And the online voice acting space is an extension of the pro voice acting space, in that it has gotten closer and closer together than it ever has been. And actors are crossing over more and more. They're getting started in one and then going into the other, not even necessarily just from online to in-person professional, but also the other way around, where in-person professionals are getting a taste of what the online voice acting space has to offer. So yeah, it's cool. But it's definitely something that I have noticed as the years have gone by.
Yeah. And on the topic of indie video games, I think you've nailed it on the head with you know, just the fact that they've become so very prominent. You know, a lot of people, you know, from those early days of where video games came from were like, I can do this, and they just learned how to do it. And now we have just such a thriving indie video game space where so many people will come together and make those initial projects, or something like student projects at college, where you would get an assignment and then people were like, I could make like a tiny little animation or a video game for my class. And then I know, I forget the college name in Canada. It's based out of Toronto, but it's a animation sort of acting college of some sort, and they do a lot of student projects that they will send out. They'll blast out into Twitter and like all these open source casting call websites and be like, hey, this is a project that we have going on for different students. They're looking for voice actors, and it's such an easy way for people breaking into the industry, maybe going, oh, maybe I can voice act, to hop on those opportunities and really see what happens. So for you specifically, what was there anything like that for you, where like there were open calls for indie games, or did you have to do a little bit more searching yourself to get those first gigs?
Yeah, I mean, some of my like, I mean, my indie game roots were things that I sort of either got recommended for or I stumbled across. What's a really good example? I mean, I guess this I got on a pay-to-play site, but when I was new, I booked Brawl Stars on voices.com, which is it's like a beat 'em up kind of game for the phone. And my character doesn't really talk. She just says her own name and she growls. But now, years later, I see commercials for it on TV. or streaming services, and they'll just pull my growls from the game and just put them on the commercial. So I'll never know it's coming. And then I'll be like, oh, that's me. Oh my gosh. And yeah, I had a couple friends, kind of point me in the right direction when I was still really new. And I booked things like Yandere Simulator, Hat in Time. Honey Pop 2 was a completely online project that I got recommended to read for. I'm trying to think of one that was like an open call. Oh, Dark Deity is a really good example of an open call that ended up turning into this really cool game. It's a Fire Emblem style strategy fighter game. Oh, wow. Yeah. And all of the characters, all of the recruitable characters have voices, and I'm one of them. Her name is Vesta, and it's full of other people who I would say are in my similar generation or the generation just below me of like coming up now, of, like really cool indie voice actors. And it was, I think, like a really well put together cast, and it just goes to show like what indie games can end up being like. And how it can turn into a really good credit for anybody. Like I'm super thankful that I got to be a part of it, because it is so good. It came out so well. So yeah, that was one that I just found online. It was available through Voice Acting Club. Everyone was auditioning for it because it looks so good. And then, as I've met a lot of people in this online space, they've been like, you got to try out for this and that. And some of my like favorite credits or credits that people come up to me to talk to me about all the time are these online games, these indie games, or animations like Starter Squad. Is the first thing that I booked that my nephew was really impressed by. He was like, oh, you're in Starter Squad. Okay. And I was like, of all the things, it's a YouTube show, but that makes so much sense. It is like new media, and it is, good. People like it because it's good and it's fun to watch. So yeah, those are some of the things I've gotten to be a part of, and I'm super thankful for it, because I really love getting to play such off the wall characters.
That's awesome. Yeah, and you mentioned YouTube too. I think I agree. YouTube, I think online platforms in general have become such a wonderful starting point for a lot of these beginning projects. Like my very first paid role is for a YouTube animated series that's completely original, and it's such a wonderful place to get started in. So like you mentioned YouTube, and I definitely agree with that. So I think it's also a great place for people to look for. So just not just indie games, but just indie projects in general.
Yeah,
absolutely.
And like if someone's having trouble getting into them, making them is also like an incredible way to get started. And a lot of my favorite actors are people that produced their own indie content, and then I stumbled across it one way or the other, and I was like, that's an actor I would like to hire. So there's so many ways, with the internet being what it is, to get started, and you don't even have to wait for anyone to give you the opportunity. You can just make it yourself. And I think that that's so cool, because the less of a barrier to entry there is, the more likely it is that like the most talented actors do get found and do get, work and to get to be a part of the industry. And I think that that's great.
Yeah, it's really, again, that low barrier to entry, like you said, making your own indie content, all that sort of stuff to sort of boost your own signal that you can do just completely of your own volition and your own ability. I think it's a lovely opportunity that the internet's opened the doors to for a lot of us. To kind of go back to sort of the auditioning process for a lot of us when we're just starting out, at least for me personally, I had the question of, you see all of these open casting auditions for such a variety of different things, from the Minecraft YouTube series to fan dubs to original indie projects. And something that my first, the 101 teacher that I had, Brendan Hunter, had mentioned was that when you're doing your career and you're building your career, you always want to think about your brand that you're creating with the projects that you do. And so that kind of made a little split in my mind for me. And I was just curious about between sending auditions for everything you see versus being a little bit more selective with what you want to audition for and what you want to put your voice out for. And for you personally, where do you fall on that fence for, I mean, when you were younger, when you were just starting out, where did you fall for those auditions? Were you just shooting for everything, or were you more selective and brand focused?
When I started, I shot for anything that was cool to me. And I still kind of operate by that principle. If it just looks like it's going to be a cool project, I go for it. Does it fit my brand? It's hard to say, because I'd like to think that my brand is professional working voice actor, you know? And so in my mind, working on stuff is the best thing that I can do for my brand. And so if I see a project that looks really cool and I want to be a part of it, I go for it. Obviously, as you get a little bit deeper into your career, you have to start thinking about like, is this fan thing, you know, going to be a problem if I want to go out for the actual thing? Am I getting to the point in my career where I can go out for the actual thing? But when I was early, anything that seemed cool, anybody who wanted to hire me, I was good for it, because I mean, practice makes perfect. And not practicing and being hyper selective, I think, is a real detriment if you are still new. Because you got to build up that resume, and you got to build up that experience, and every job done is, you know, making you better. That being said, of course, I would avoid things that seemed like they were never going to come out. You know, maybe they seemed a little too disjointed, not well run. Those sorts of things I would steer clear of. And I would recommend that anybody, you know, be kind of cautious of things that they think are not actually going to come to fruition. But no, I never had a concern about my brand, because the fact of the matter is, people can still stumble across things that I did when I was very, very new, and my name's on it, and they'd be like, whoa, Marissa's in this random, you know, like
Bible bed sheets.
Exactly. They can come across me and doing the Bible bed sheets commercial and be like, whoa, this is really random. I don't expect to hear her here. Or, you know, any of those Newgrounds animations that I was a part of, I'm sure people would be shocked to find them. But the fact of the matter is, if I don't heavily advertise what I'm in, it's very likely that people won't even notice that it's me. You know, my voice is not so recognizable. They'll probably watch it and be like, okay, that was good, and not even check who's in the cast list. So if someone is worried about like, oh, I don't want these things, you know, tarnishing my brand, you take it off your resume when, you know, it doesn't fit your brand anymore. And I could never imagine that it would harm somebody to be like, oh, when you were new, you did indie stuff. It's like, yeah, dude, everybody does. Like, that's obvious. And a lot of us keep doing indie stuff, even, you know, deep into our careers, because it's still fun. And a lot of these projects are still really good. But yeah, if you feel like you outgrow something, or it's not appropriate for your brand anymore, or, you know, you get into a position where you're like, oh, I did a fan thing, but now it's time to audition for the real thing, and I really want to book it. It's as easy as taking it off your resume, in my opinion. There's no need to, you know, get it taken down or distance yourself from it. You know, it's just on the internet. It exists, but it's just a cool thing that you did, you know? And it's fine that it's just kind of there still, because again, most people are not going to recognize you and stuff, or check the cast list right. for all these things that you did. It's better, in my opinion, to get the experience, and to work with, you know, indie creators and other indie voice actors, and get to know people and form your community, than it is to be picky early on. There's not really a point to that. Again, asterisk, unless you think it's not going to come out and it's not going to come together, then yeah, maybe you skip on that one. But if you see something cool, like, you go for it, man. That's what I think.
Yeah, love to see that. And sort of like with the cool factor for indie projects, is that because for a lot of indie projects that you see out there that are like casting and stuff, you recognize it's pretty obvious if, you know, the telltale signs of this is probably going to come out, because it's like a labor of love for the creator and they put a lot of effort into it. Does that sort of transition into like the professional world at all? Like when you see more professional shows being developed for bigger studios, is it as like discerning to see like whether a show is going to be actually made or if it's not going to be actually made? Does that cross over?
Not so much usually, because things that are being cast in the professional space, I would say you have a 99% chance that it's going to get made.
Okay.
There are pilots, and those are things that you would do, like that's like pre-animation pilots, where you record it and you go, okay, we don't actually know if the pilot's going to get picked up. It might not get completed, but the pilot episode will get made. Because again, it's being made in a professional space. Somebody's paying a lot of money to get it recorded. So
Right.
it's probably going to come out. And whether I would be picky based on what studio is sending me stuff, usually not. Usually if a studio sends me any audition, I go for it, regardless of what it is. Because, they were nice enough to extend the offer to me, especially if it's a private audition. You want to send something in. There are instances where maybe there are things where I go like, hey, I don't think this is the right fit for me, but generally it's not because of any quality, discernation. It's more about like, hey, I noticed that you're looking for primarily Asian actors. That's not me. But let me recommend some of my friends, some of my colleagues, actors that I know. And that's very common, is for someone to pass on a professional audition, but to kind of recommend somebody that they know who fits well, to say like, thank you for thinking of me. I don't want to leave you hanging. Here's a better option. But generally, if someone sends me an audition, and it's any professional studio, I am going to get my audition in, and, no matter what it is, I go for it.
Okay. Awesome. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah. Moving on to your experience as a director. Of course, you were a voice actor for a long time before you took on the directing role. I was very curious, in terms of directing, like, what was it like to take on your first role as a director? And I also know that you have had an experience in the past where you had to direct for someone who was kind of, I guess, defensive.
Mm-hmm.
And you had a bit of trouble with that. And I'm just wondering, do you kind of change your directing method depending on who you are working with?
Absolutely. Every actor is different. And in my mind, the most important thing when directing is to make sure that the actor is comfortable and that everybody is having a good time. You, the actor, and the engineer should all be just having a good time. And that means a different thing depending on the actor. For some, having a good time means literally becoming friends. But for others, it means that it's just a smooth and professional experience where everybody comes out happy. Both are super valid, and it really just depends on the vibe, depends on the actor. Some people come just to do the job, and some people come with the idea that they're going to become best friends with the crew and have a great time. And I love both of those. As long as they are not, as you mentioned, like one of my early experiences with a super diva actor. That's the actor you never want to be. You never want to be the diva. You never want to be someone that, everybody goes, oh my God, every time. You want to be cool and professional, and it's okay if you don't want to become friends with every director that you ever work with. That's not necessary, but there is the other option of just wanting to go in and have a good time and do a professional job and have everything go smooth. Super valid. So either of those is what I'm looking for. I'm looking for good vibes, positivity, and as the director, it is my job to foster that kind of environment, to try my best to make sure that everyone is having a good time, and also, of course, that we are producing quality work. And also, actors will have different ways that they work based on where they got their experience, whether they come from the online space, LA, Dallas, Houston, New York. Everyone's got a little bit of a different style, and being able to adapt to an actor's style and accommodate them is also a really important skill for a director. So that you are not frustrating the actor, putting them through the ringer unnecessarily. If I can very minorly change my directing style to make the actor more comfortable, I'll do it. because as a director, my job is pretty easy, honestly. Most of the work is in the casting. If you cast properly, the job of actually directing sessions gets way, way easier because you can just let the actor kind of go. Because as long as you cast them properly, they're going to really already embody the character and be able to do the voice. And you're just going to be making small adjustments. You're going to be telling them to change their emotion in this scene or their read on that line. And it's going to be minor things. And that means that I'm just sitting there listening most of the time. And because of that, it is very easy for me to just make adjustments, make small adjustments of, okay, this actor goes one line at a time. This actor likes to do whole scenes in one go. This actor likes to act on top of the Japanese track and talk along with their character. This actor likes to listen to the Japanese first and then go second. Obviously, I'm talking about anime. Usually you'll see a lot less difference in styles if you're doing like video games, because it's way more straightforward of just like you say the line. But yeah, being able to adjust and make the actor feel comfortable is a super important skill. Anyone who wants to become a director, I would say that that is one of the most important things to keep in mind, that it is your job to keep things moving, keep it smooth, make sure that things turn out well, and to keep the vibe good.
Yeah, kind of keep things happy in the booth then. I love that. That resonates a lot with me as a communications major. That's what I went to college for specifically. I love to hear that directing is basically facilitating great communication between the engineer and the actor. I love that. That's really awesome to hear. And sort of in terms of being on both sides of that fence, when you started directing in the beginning, how did you balance all the different sort of pursuits that you were going for at the time, being a voice actor, but also being a director? And then later on, how'd you balance that with also writing for some shows as well?
Yeah, it can be hard, especially with script writing can eat up 2 to 3 days of your week, depending on how difficult the show is. Some shows I've had where I can sit down and knock out an episode in a day, and some shows I've had where I'm like, it's going to take me 3 days to get through this, either because of how complicated the translation is, or if it's comedy, it's going to take me longer because I sit and I agonize over jokes forever. The more serious and straightforward a show is, the quicker I can knock it out. But the important thing is time management, making sure that I don't say yes to too many projects, although I'm very bad at that. I say that as like, hey, this is what you should do, but I don't. I always say yes.
There's so many good things out there.
Exactly. I want to do everything. I always say yes, but it is really important to be able to do time management, even if you do what I do, which you shouldn't do, and say yes to everything. What I do that is very important is that I block things out on my calendar where I go, okay, this day I am going to sit down and write because I have a free day that day. And then this day I've got directing from this time to this time. I can't book voice acting during that time, but I got to make sure that I keep a day open for voice acting. I used to plan, all of my holidays where I said, I can't leave until Tuesday and I have to come back before Friday so that I have one day every week available in case someone needs me for an emergency voiceover, whatever. Can't be gone for more than 2 weeks solid. Now that I'm more established, I'm a little more loosey goosey with that rule, and I go, okay, I'll figure it out. But it used to be that like being available, making sure that I never double booked myself, keeping very meticulous records of calendars and schedules. That's how I do. And it can be hard because it does mean giving up leisure time. I would not recommend it for someone whose mental health depends a lot on having leisure time, because it can get bad if you do not give yourself proper leisure time that you need. But I'm the kind of person where I thrive on work. If I'm not working, that's when my mental health starts to go bad. So I can accept a lot of stuff and be bouncing back and forth all day where I go, okay, I write in the morning and then I direct in the afternoon and then I have voice acting in the evening, and that fulfills me. So for me, it's not a bad thing to be kind of in a million places at once and have a million plates spinning. But it is important that everybody keep track of themselves, because for people whose mental health really depends on being able to de-stress or take leisure time or take breaks, it's very important that you also budget that into your calendar, just like it's a task you have to do. You know, you go, this day I am taking off. That is my leisure time. I'm just the kind of person where if I'm not working, then I start to get anxious. So I say, bring on the work. Absolutely.
Yeah, I love it. And, you know, getting all those plates spinning, is there, do you prefer a specific type of spinning plate, as it were? You know, do you find yourself leaning in towards more direction work or writing work or voice acting work?
For me, I think that I like all of them in different ways. I definitely get something very special out of casting and directing. It's so cool to have the full overview of how the show is going to come together and picking out actors and how they're going to interact with each other. And, ooh, this is I've never seen these two actors as leads together and they're my two leads. Like, oh my God, this is so exciting. Like, it's so fun. But of course, you know, I got into this industry to be a voice actor, and being a voice actor is still my first love in that way. But the thing with acting specifically is that I never know when it's going to happen. You know, I never know when I'm going to book something. I never know what character I'm going to book. There's no way to specifically go do more of it. You know, if it's not coming my way, if I have a dry spell, I just have a dry spell and there's nothing I can do about it. Whereas directing, I can go to my boss and say, hey, I want to direct, I want to do more directing. I want to direct more. And then I can just do it. It's basically my full-time job at this point. So do I prefer directing? Do I prefer acting? No, not really. I don't really prefer either. But only one of them I can control how much of it I do. So of course, whenever acting does come along, I grab onto it. And I go, I'm not letting you go. I really want to voice act. So on the opportunities where it comes, I grab onto it and I prioritize it. But if I had to say what's my favorite between like directing and writing, I do really enjoy writing. But I miss interacting with the actors. You know, my script goes off and I go, oh, and there it goes. You know, I can't wait to hear what it sounds like, but oh, I wish I could be a fly on the wall and listen as they record the words that I wrote. So my favorite, you know, is when I get to do both. Things like Kimono Friends, where I was the script writer and the director, my absolute favorite, number one favorite. And I was a voice in that too. So it was, you know, the best of all three worlds.
Oh man.
But yeah.
It's a cute show too.
I love that show. I love that show with all my heart. And that dub, I mean, I really put 110% into it, or at least, you know, I tried my very best because I didn't want to disappoint the fandom. And I also wanted it to be something that my nieces and nephew could watch. And I wanted the dub to be good because especially when a show means so much to people, it's really a shame when the dub isn't everything that it could be. So, you know, we went out of our way to get different actors for each friend so they could all have a unique voice, even though there were 55 characters in the show. Went out of our way to get zookeepers and other animal professionals to come in and record all the info bits in the middle of the episodes. You know, stuff like that just really can make a dub special. And I was like, I want to go, you know, the extra mile for Kimono Friends because I love Kimono Friends so much. So that's, I mean, that is one of my great loves, is being able to write, direct, and act in a show. If I could do it more, I would absolutely jump on it immediately. I go, yes, I will write the script and direct the show. Yes. But it can be a little mentally taxing to have both of some of the most important jobs on a show, both be on your shoulders at the exact same time, because then, you know, people are waiting on you. You got to get it done. But yeah, it's my favorite.
That kind of reminds me the way you were talking about how, you know, you have that love for voice acting, but directing, man, it's just so much fun getting to like interact with everybody. Mm-hmm. It reminded me of I play Dungeons and Dragons, and mm-hmm. I started out as just a player, and then when I took on the dungeon master role, I realized that it's just so much fun being in that seat.
Oh yeah.
Where you get to direct the whole, you get to direct the story. You get to control, like, be all these different characters and direct where they're gonna go. And it's just it's like, ha ha ha, I'm the one in charge now. And it's such a fun feeling, but there's still that I miss being a character sometimes as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exact same vibes. That is exactly what I think any voice actor feels when they move into the director's role. It's the same thing.
And then I did have a question. You mentioned before at the beginning about being up to date and just being aware of what generation you're dealing with. Speaking of that, as far as the nowadays media that is being put out there, do you continue to find the time among everything else that you are doing? Do you continue to find the time to still consume and like participate just casually in that media? Like, do you play games? Do you watch, anime or cartoons or stuff that you participated in or people who did? And do you think it's really important for people to still continue consuming those things?
Oh yeah. I mean, I try my best. I always try to find time. It can get hard sometimes, but I try to find time to keep up on indie games, new media like YouTube series that are really popular, anime from studios that are not ones that I work with, cartoons, and just listen to the voiceover. And there's two reasons for that. Number one is my actor side, where I want to keep up with the trends. I want to know what things are sounding like nowadays, because, you listen to commercials even from the 50s and you listen to commercials from now, and the style is very, very different.
Very, very different.
Very, very different. So if you hadn't listened to a commercial since the 50s and you were trying to audition for commercials now, you were going to have a problem. And the same thing is true, I think, if you grow up on mostly older dubs and you try to come in and audition for dubs, you may struggle with the fact that the style is a little bit different nowadays. Obviously, there are still instances that call for the old style, especially since I'm very fond of old style dubs. We were just watching Monster Rancher, and I was raving to my friends about how good it is. It's such a good dub. It has these really strong vocal performances where everyone is very unique. You can close your eyes and tell immediately which character is talking. And it's got these cute little comedy zingers that are just still funny to this day. But that really over the top style of kids acting is not as popular nowadays, as much as I wish it kind of was. I really do miss it. But it is important, if you want to go out for kids content, that you watch My Little Ponies and My Little Ponies. What am I? I was going to say the My Little Ponies, the Transformers, the Rubies, all the new things that the kids are watching. But same thing with any, genre. If you want to get into games, you better have played some games that actually have voiceover in them. If you've only played NES games that had no VO in them, how are you going to know what games sound like? And so, yeah, it is really important for my actor brain to keep up on the trends and know what things sound like and make sure that I'm tailoring my acting to the genre that I'm going for. But also from my director's brain, I want to know who's the who's who in the world. I want to know who's on the come up, new actors that I really should know, especially people who are getting their start in like indie games and stuff, but also actors who maybe I haven't seen around as much. And, there's a studio that uses them religiously, and I should be watching their stuff so I can hear what they sound like, because maybe I want to bring them into my fold. I love watching like anime dubs from different regions and then going, okay, which of these New York actors could I get into my stuff? These Texas actors, these LA actors, let's, mix them up and get them all in here. Canadian actors. And then, just to hear, it's important to hear what everybody's doing for both brains, the actor brain and the director brain, because there's nothing worse than getting stale, either in your acting or in your directing and casting. Nobody appreciates it's the same thing over and over and over and over. You want to constantly be able to serve up new voices, new styles, and new compilations. I think the word I'm looking for is configurations of actors. Yes. You don't want a cast list to be the same people over and over and over again. There's nothing fresh and exciting about that. It's good to always be on the lookout for new voices and new people to bring into the fold so that you can make sure that you are creating the best cast that you can for each individual project, with unique voices for the characters that'll stand the test of time, that people will go, yeah, that was a great performance, or that was X character's voice for sure.
Yeah.
I love that kind of thing. And it's so important to not let yourself get complacent on either side of the glass, either as an actor or as a director.
Right. Variety is the spice of life, as they say.
Mm-hmm.
Definitely.
Absolutely.
And sort of on the topic of finding entertainment that you really liked, and then trying to figure out the voices and who made it. You mentioned previously how you do cold calls sometimes, where you will just reach out to people and be like, hey, do you want to work with me? And is that kind of how you go about finding the people you want to cold call, is through those shows and finding those actors and then just sending out an email to the
100%.
studio? Yeah.
I will just remember something and be like, oh man, that show had a great dub, or that game I just played had a really good cast. Let me just email everybody that was in it. And I do that all the time. And honestly, I don't even usually do an intro email where I go, hey, do you want to work with me? Sometimes I'll just start sending them auditions without even asking. And then they go, what? Where did this come from? And I go, don't worry about it. Don't worry about it. I've done that quite a few times, and it's led to working with some of my favorite people. Just because, again, variety's the spice of life. I never want to be not working with somebody, especially if they are open to it. Then I kick myself where I go, I could have done this 2 years ago, and I could have had you in so many things.
Oh yeah.
So I never want to be kicking myself. So whenever I think of somebody and I go, ooh, I just remembered they had that great performance, I should really reach out to them. I do it immediately. Because I never want to miss out on, I give a great example. When I was casting Arte, which is an anime that we did for Funimation, thank you.
Yeah.
A lot of the actors who I cast in that, it was my first time ever sending them an audition. Erica Schroeder, Wayne Grayson, Doug Gerholtz, Michael Sorich. It was my first time contacting a lot of them. And it's because they had been recommended to me by a friend. They were like, oh, here are some actors that you should really have in your stuff. They're amazingly prolific. And I was like, yeah, I know all these guys, and yeah, I'd love to have them in my thing. I'll just send them the audition for Arte. And I was like, 100%. And I ended up using a ton of them. A lot of people in that show, it was my first time using them. And I was like, this would be a completely different cast if I hadn't just gone for it and contacted all those guys. And because I truly believe that they were the right voices for the characters, I can't even imagine what it would be like if I hadn't had them. So it's so important, regardless of who it is, whether it's oh my God, I grew up with their voice, I want to work with them so bad. Or if it's oh, that's a person I've never heard of before, but I love their acting, I gotta contact them. It's so important to just do it. Right away, just do it, because you never want to miss out on having someone. And it's the same concept if you're a voice actor. If there's a project you want to be in, or you see an audition pop up that you really want to do, go for it immediately. In my mind, I'm if you do it as soon as possible, right away, then you have no regrets.
Just
going for it. I love that.
Just going for it.
That's kind of interesting, because I've heard before that sometimes casting directors won't get through all of the auditions if they happen to find the voice that's the voice. And I think it's a good point to make that, because it's the faster you audition for something, the sooner you see it, the higher up you're going to be on probably the list of when they're going to hear you.
Sure.
Do you often listen to every single audition, or do you sometimes you find the voice you want and you're like, nope, there's nobody else, that's the voice?
I do try to listen to all the auditions. I don't like skipping over people, and I don't like listening to people before the deadline, because that's just not fair to the actors that you invited to audition. I'm like, if I say that it's due on Wednesday and I cast it on Monday, that's just not very fair. Especially because you don't know what's going on in certain people's lives. The perfect voice actor might have been waiting for Tuesday because, you know, their grandma fell and they had to go to the ER all Sunday or something. It's just not fair to cast before a deadline. And it's also not fair to not listen to everybody. I will say, while I do listen to everybody, of course, if I start listening to the people who submitted early and someone really great really stands out, they then become the bar that I judge all of the auditions after them by.
Right.
So I do listen to everybody's audition, but it does get tougher and tougher to stand out the further I go down the list. Unless it's a situation like, I always like to tell this story, Kageki Shoujo, where both of my main characters, I started panicking as I was going down the list, because I was like, these auditions, all the auditions I get are good. But sometimes they're just not the voice of the character. And I go like, oh my God, I'm not finding anybody for either of my main characters. I'm freaking out. And then all the way down towards the bottom, I found Civ Ryan S and Xanthi Huynh X. And I was like, oh, thank God, there they are. You know, I found them. And in those instances, I didn't even have a short list that I was comparing the actors to. I was just comparing them to the vision in my head of what I thought these characters should sound like. And I got so relieved when I found someone who finally hit it. But when I have a character who's maybe a little more general, maybe I'm a little more open to various interpretations of the character, I'm not quite sure what I want them to sound like, then it becomes a shortlisting process where every time I hear an audition that makes me go, ooh, that one's pretty good, that becomes the new bar by which I judge all of the auditions that come after it.
Right.
And you know, that's just sort of the way it goes. You know, it's just sort of how the cookie crumbles. But no, I never like to not listen to all the auditions, because who knows what's lurking in that last couple. You know, there might be someone who's really perfect and I went for kind of good, you know, and didn't listen to perfect. I would be kicking myself. Especially since I cast all of my side characters and bit parts, like all of the, you know, people chatting in the background and everything. I cast all of those off of my main character auditions for every individual show. I don't like to call in people who didn't audition. So it behooves me to listen to everybody, because then I know my entire pool for that project. I go, here's everybody I'm going to be able to pick from. So it's really important to me, not only for the fairness to the actor, but also for the end quality of the product, that I give everybody a shot, because you never know where that perfect voice is going to be, not only for the character that you're currently casting, but for all the characters who are going to come after.
Right. Is there ever a point when you're listening through those auditions where you do have a vision in your head, but you listen to an audition and you go, ooh, that wasn't quite what I had in mind, but, you know, kind of surprise you and maybe inspires a new take on the character?
Oh, yeah. I'll give you a perfect example. I was casting something where the specs did not call for an accent, but they did say that they wanted the character to have a unique sound. And they gave references to a couple characters who did have accents. And generally, the character seemed British. A lot of people auditioned British. And as I'm listening to these British auditions, I'm like, yeah, that's what I basically envisioned. Like, yeah, okay, these are great, good. I'm downloading the ones that I like. And then I come across one and the actor has gone Jamaican. And I was like, ooh. And that ended up being one of my favorite takes on the character. I was like, that's so unique and interesting, and he's so fun to listen to. He still had the same lines that everyone else was performing with this posh British accent, but he was Jamaican. And I was like, that's cool. I dig it. And I don't know who they ended up choosing, because that was a client where I had to send them 6 options, and then they got, they picked whoever they wanted. But he was one of my top 6, where I was like, here's a fun one that I think you should really listen to and consider. So yeah, absolutely. People can do something kind of off the wall, and it really makes your ear perk up, especially if you're hearing a lot of auditions that are the same. And that's sort of the double-edged sword as a voice actor, because if you're doing what everyone else is doing, there is the opportunity of just sort of there is the possibility of just sort of blending into the crowd of like, I sound like everybody else, but also it means that you're probably on the right track and you might absolutely nail it. Exactly what the casting director was asking for. Or you can go be the off the wall take, which may make their tired ears perk up and go, ooh, that's something interesting that I hadn't considered. Or they may go, that's completely wrong. And both are valid. Both are completely valid. And in my mind, it's very valuable when I get both. It's nice when people go exactly according to spec and give me exactly what I want, because that's another option for me to find that perfect voice. But it's also nice when people give me something different, because either it makes me reconsider that character and do something different with them, or it makes me think, not for this character, but I've got something else for them that this off the wall take would be perfect for. So it's a gamble. And I definitely like when actors do one or the other. Maybe, on some characters they play it safer, and then on some characters they go, okay, this is my off the wall take. I like it. I personally like it, because it really does challenge my notion of what these characters are supposed to sound like. And it gives me another opportunity to find the voice I'm looking for, which I always appreciate. I would much rather someone give me an off the wall take that doesn't quite fit spec rather than skip the character. I hate when people skip characters. I really want to hear everyone try everyone, even if it's not in their wheelhouse at all, because again, I might have a need for them on a side character or a bit part. And so getting to hear them try every character in the audition is really, really useful for me. I like it quite a bit. I know not every director will agree. Some people go, please don't waste my time if a character is not in your wheelhouse, because I have to get through 200 auditions and, you're adding another one to the pile. But in my mind, I'm like, hey, I could skip the audition if it's not what I need. I would much rather have it than not. So that's how I feel about it.
That kind of reminds me of a little story that Sean Chiplock had told about how he auditioned for a video game for this like buff, I think he was a buff character of some kind. And he went in with like this really sassy, high-pitched Swedish voice. And the casting people thought it was so hilarious. They're like, we gotta have this, because they had listened to hundreds of auditions of people just going in with like gruff, manly voice. Mm-hmm. And then he went in with that, and they were like, yeah, that's what we want.
And it all depends, like it depends on the genre. Mm-hmm. Obviously, the more serious something is, the more they're going to want to stick close to a real voice that's not going to make people laugh. But especially if you're coming in on a comedy thing, giving that kind of off the wall, or even not comedy, but just lighthearted, giving that kind of off the wall take can be the difference, and I love when people just go for it, especially if they have a fun idea. Mm-hmm. It's great. And it can also work where, I got an audition for an anime where they were auditioning the main girl and her best friend, but I knew that there was a villain who came up a couple episodes later. So I auditioned for the best friend as the villain. And I ended up booking the villain part. So that's an instance where I was never going to book the best friend doing a villain voice. It wasn't going to happen. But I was able to tailor my audition to what I knew the project was going to be. And again, I think that some directors might appreciate that because they go, oh my God, now I don't have to think about the villain. And some directors might get annoyed with that because they feel like, that's not what the best friend is supposed to sound like. What are you doing? So it depends. It depends on the project. It depends on who you're going out for. I knew that director quite well. So I
see.
Yeah, I assumed she wouldn't get annoyed by me doing that. So it is important to tailor, what you're doing, especially again, if you come in with sassy Swedish voice, maybe not appropriate for a serious period drama. But if it's like a lighthearted JRPG, like, yeah, maybe, why not? You know, worst comes to worst, you don't get the part, and you probably wouldn't have anyway because you didn't have like a basic voice for it. So you just do it and you show the director something interesting, and who knows? Worst comes to worst, you know, they remember you as the guy that had a fun audition, and maybe, you know, in the future they need that guy, and it's fine if it's not on this project, maybe the next one.
Definitely. I like that a lot. Like, you never know, you know, you could send an audition and not get that project, but maybe though they're working on another project later and they're like, hey, remember that audition that didn't quite fit that time? I think it'll fit this time. So I think that's really important, the whole audition for everything anyway sort of take on it.
Absolutely.
And then my next question, kind of veering way off topic there, just back onto when you're starting out, and I think this is a problem for a lot of people who are getting started, and it was very interesting to hear in the event that you did, that you had mentioned that you still kind of experience anxiety when you're in the booth, and the way you deal with it. Of course, everyone deals with things a bit differently, and you have found yourself a good way to just you know, suppress it until later. But does it still affect you at all when you are in the booth, when you are trying to act? Does it still kind of affect your acting sometimes?
I think it's super natural to get nervous and anxious when you're in the booth, because, you know, you want to do a good job. And for me, the thing that really helps and that I try and keep in my brain is, when I'm in the director's seat, I want my actors to succeed, because then everything is going to go smooth. And I remind myself that the director would rather me succeed than anything else. So I don't have to be nervous about what the director's thinking, or if I'm being judged, or if, you know, because no, they want me to do well. The only thing that I truly can get nervous about is doing a bad job. And unfortunately, there's no way to comfort yourself in that sort of situation. If you're worried about doing a good job, you're just gonna kind of be worried the whole time. And finding individual coping tactics for trying to, you know, let that anxiety out is important. For me, it's just, I take a big breath and I try to remind myself, like, you are a professional. You have been doing this for a while now. You have no reason to be nervous. You went to school for acting. Relax. But it's natural, you know, it's a natural response to be nervous. And being able to sort of live with those nerves instead of letting them affect your acting or make you stop in the middle of a session. Like, that's the worst thing that you could do, is let it get the better of you. And it can be really hard, especially depending on how severe one's anxiety is. But finding those little tricks, or trying to remind yourself that everyone in that room is on your side. Those are the things that I find help me. And hopefully anyone who is getting started and is dealing with anxiety can find something comforting to help them in a similar vein. It's going to be different for everybody. But it is important to remember that I think a lot of actors have to deal with the anxiety, especially since a lot of us are the same kind of people. You know, we were maybe nerdier kids. We grew up loving this kind of stuff, loving anime, loving video games. And now a lot of us are getting into the leadership positions of this kind of thing. So, like, you know, you might have a session with me and I'm your director, and I'm just a nerdy kid like you who grew up watching Pokemon and Digimon and wanted to be a part of the industry. So there's really nothing to be nervous about. And if that comforts anybody, take it, put it in your pocket and keep it for later and remind yourself of that. If it doesn't help, if that knowledge doesn't work at all for you, find something that does and just try to hold on to it. And try not to stress yourself out too much. The worst thing that you could do is walk out of a session or, you know, cause some kind of commotion. It's okay if you just have to, you know, take a couple extra goes at the line to get it perfect. Nobody's going to begrudge you for that. As long as you stand tall and be professional, no one's going to begrudge you for it. I've even had people do like non-nervousness exercises or like breathing or whatever, and I don't care. It's all fine. You know, as long as you're just cool about it and not weird about it, which, you know, it's an individual thing, and it's more important that you take care of yourself while still being professional and polite and pleasant, and then nobody's going to hold it against you.
Yeah, definitely. I think that there is definitely, at least for me personally, of course I cannot speak for everyone, there is just there's a comfort in knowing that even industry professionals still get nervous.
Yeah.
Like that alone is such a comfort. It's like, okay, you know what? It's fine. Like even Marissa Lenti gets nervous. It's fine. I can do this. So
I mean,
it's comforting alone just to know that.
Sometimes I get in there and I go, I've done this a million times. I'm not nervous at all. Let's do it, guys. And then sometimes I get in there and I'm like, I mean, I just did Pokemon not that long ago. Pokemon Evolutions. I got to play Malva. I had 2 lines and I was so freaking nervous. I was like, I gotta really nail these 2 lines. It's Pokemon, man. I grew up watching. I still play Pokemon. I can't mess this up. And then, you know, I did the 2 lines and they were like, great, we're done. And I was like, oh my god. But yeah, it even small parts, you know, people get nervous, especially if you feel like you have a lot riding on it. It's just important to remember, especially once you get to that position, you're like, I've done this before, you know, I've done the training, I've done the workshops. Everyone here wants me to do well. Here we go. You know, I'll just give them what I can do. And that's what they hired you for. They hired you for what you can do. So as long as you just give them that, you should be good.
Definitely. Thank you.
Yeah, that's awesome. And kind of tangentially related to everyone being kind of the same and having those anxieties, putting a spin on that, I know something that's very big and important for you is diversity in the industry and getting different cultures, different backgrounds, different peoples involved in all of the projects and all of that, which as an Asian myself, I love that. Love that inclusive, and that's it's a major objective for you to bring that diversity to the industry. And I was just wondering if was there like a sort of cataclysm moment for you, like just like sitting in the industry, that you were like, oh, there needs to be more in here, or were you just like a champion of the cause to be a champion of the cause because you're awesome like that?
Well, I think it was just sort of an observation of my surroundings, because when I was really new, I didn't really know how things were supposed to be, you know, especially with like diversity and representation. I played a lot of characters who did not really match who I was. And I just kind of thought, you know, like, that's just the way it is. And to be fair, it is in some instances where, you know, you step into another character's shoes, you step into someone else's skin and you portray them. I've portrayed a lot of moms. I'm not a mom, you know, that sort of thing. And being able to act out someone else's life experience is what an actor is all about. But, you know, sometimes there are these characters that come up where it's like, man, you know, this would really be better if someone who really understood this culture or really understood this experience was bringing something real to this character. And I sort of looked around at, you know, all of the actors that I knew, and I was like, man, sure are a lot of us who are white. I'm noticing.
Yeah.
You know, and a lot of my friends, you know, are not white, but, you know, we would look beyond ourselves and go, okay, so it seems like everyone, there's a lot of people here who are white. And
yeah, you notice that a lot in the industry.
Yeah. And like, you know, not for nothing, those are some of the most amazing voice actors who have been around forever sometimes. But then you go, so where are everybody else? You know, that's kind of what it felt like. It's like, where are they? Where are they hiding? What's going on? And that's when I started to talk to my friends who are POC and other actors who are POC who I didn't know that well. And I sort of asked them, like, you know, what's up? You know, what's the deal? And, you know, a lot of people would tell me stories about like, I get shut out of opportunities because I'm not white. Or it really took me a long time to get anyone to take me seriously for characters who weren't exactly like me. A lot of Black voice actors say I only get called in if the character's Black, and otherwise I don't get to try out for anybody else. I only get called in if the character is a monster. I only get called in if they're some kind of animal creature with no skin color at all.
Yeah.
And I go, I started thinking about that, and I was like, that's a big problem. And then I go, okay, and then why is it just you guys? Like, it can't be that, a lot of studios you'll see will have the one Black guy and the one Black girl and the one Asian guy and the one Asian girl. And it's like, where is everybody else? That can't possibly be all the actors of color who are interested in doing this kind of work. What is going on? And it's like, well, a lot of actors of color spin their wheels forever and give up because people don't give them the opportunities that the white voice actors get. And I was just like, that sucks. I hate that.
Yeah.
I don't want that to be the case, because in my mind, I think that the industry should be made up of the best voice actors that there are. And if some people are giving up because they're being discriminated against, we are losing out on potentially some of the greatest voice actors of our time. And that sucks. That sucks so bad. And also, I think it's great when you have a character that needs an authentic perspective, that you are able to find someone who can give it. There are some really specific specs that I've had come up where I go, I don't know any voice actors who are Cherokee. I don't know any voice actors who are Canadian, Indigenous, and trans. I don't know. And that shouldn't be. There should be at least one person, and it definitely highlights a huge problem that we have with actors of very specific niches only getting called upon when those kinds of things come up, and therefore they vanish when those opportunities go away. And it's like, that's not good. Everyone should be getting access to the same opportunities and then also be called upon when their specific niche comes up. And I'm like, okay, so, what do I do about this? And when I started casting and really trying to be diverse and inclusive, I had a lot of lessons that I needed to learn. I had a lot of actors who pulled me aside and was like, hey, this is not really the right way to go about it. Like, try this. And I go, okay, I'll keep that in mind. And I've sort of just built on that and built on that and built on that over time until I've come to, how I cast now, which I hope is, kind of the right way to cast, in that it is very inclusive and everyone gets a shot, but I still try and choose without bias and, just pick the best voice actor for the role. And I found that it creates these naturally diverse casts, because if you have a diverse pool of actors trying out, the cream is just going to rise to the top. And that does mean that sometimes you cast a newcomer who is POC and didn't get opportunities before. And sometimes you cast someone who's, been in the industry forever, who is, any, sort of specification. Just not discriminating, which sounds easy, to be like, just don't discriminate. But it's hard, especially if you, don't have anyone informing your perspective in a healthy way. So it's really important for me that I keep my ears open, that I listen to the actors who represent groups that I am not a part of, that I know what's going on with them, what their struggles are, and that I am constantly seeking out new actors. And again, the big argument that you always hear, and I hate when I hear it because it's such a flawed argument, is people who say, I don't care if the actor is Black or Asian or Middle Eastern or gay or trans. I just want the best voice actors to be working. And I'm like, okay, but these are the best voice actors.
Yeah.
I do not hire subpar voice actors ever. I want to find the best voice actors who can also bring authentic performances to these characters. And oftentimes that authenticity is what elevates the performance from good to great. But also, specifically seeking out actors who can fill these niches and then choosing the best ones, you get great actors. And it is, in my opinion, extremely idiotic to think that of all the Asian voice actors, for example, that none of them are good. That's crazy to say, like, I want the best voice actors, which means white voice actors who've been in the industry for a long time. I'm like, do you hear the absolute insanity coming out of your mouth? Because how would those odds work out? That all POC voice actors are bad? That can't be. That's impossible. And it's wrong. A lot of the best voice actors and who have been in this industry for a long time are POC. Johnny Young Bosch, Christina V. You think like to names like Major Attaway, who's on Broadway now, but he also does voice work, and amazing voice actors. The problem is that there should be more. I should be able to name off so many more, so much more easily. But it's changing now. The landscape is changing now. And I don't think anyone would be able to, in good faith, say like, oh, none of these new voice actors who are coming in who represent a more diverse group of actors are bad. It's just wrong, because the best ones are the ones who are rising to the top. Again, it is just insanity to say that, anyone from a particular group, there's no way for them to be a good actor. It's like, what are you talking about? Anyone who puts in the time, puts in the work, takes workshops, learns to act, it really doesn't matter who they are. They're going to get behind a microphone, and the only time it's going to matter is when I need to cast someone who can really bring an authentic performance. And that's going to be an amazing performance, But otherwise, like for any general character, a good voice actor is a good voice actor is a good voice actor. And that's why it is important, not only for authentic representation of characters who have these specific needs and niches, but also so that all of the best voice actors, regardless of who they are the ones who are being auditioned for, anything. Because if you're leaving out some of the best talent, you're just creating a subpar product. You just are. You need to have everybody who is good auditioning.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. And this argument that I see an argument a lot, and it's just the most ridiculous argument, is that you see a lot of companies, not just in the voiceover industry, but a lot of companies are pushing, to bring on a more diverse cast into their company. And I see this comment a lot is, they are only hiring these people because of they want to be more diverse. Like, no, these people have always been good. They're just being given more opportunities now. And of course, such a silly thing to see, like, oh, they're only hiring them because of this. No, that's not the case at all.
And of course, people go, well, why am I seeing them everywhere? It's just because people want to get diversity. And it's like, no, it's because this person has been denied opportunities for so long.
Exactly.
That now that the landscape has changed, suddenly everyone goes, ooh, that person's good, actually. I should be using them. And that's why you see them everywhere. Of course, there is the possibility that there's going to be, one company somewhere that's doing it for all the wrong reasons. And you can never completely erase that possibility from existence, but it is crazy to assume that every place is doing it for that reason. And that every place would lower their standards just to appear good on the outside. That's crazy. And again, it could be happening, but every place, there's no way. In the same way that I'm like, every POC voice actor is bad, no shot. There's no way. So it's just a flawed argument. And for me, I go, okay, what I need to do is find all of the best voice actors. I need to go looking for them in any place that I can. I need to turn over rocks, and I need to look, I need to look in every single corner of the internet. And inevitably, just by doing that, I have found some of the best POC LGBT voice actors out there, because they are in their own little corner of the internet doing their thing and doing it well. And it is doing a disservice to not go looking for them. And once you find them, I mean, you're going to be happy you did, because I do a lot of casting for Death Battle. And someone put together a compilation of all of the actors that we've had on the show, and someone said, wow, I never realized how many POC actors are in Death Battle. And I go, yeah, because these are good, these are my favorite guys. Nick Louie, who has done the most characters on the show, is Asian, and I could not imagine casting without him as an option, because I've cast him so many times. You could only imagine what it would be like if I didn't have him as an option. So yeah, to me, anyone who wouldn't go and find all the best voice actors is just doing themselves a disservice. And naturally, if you go looking for talent that you don't know, you're gonna turn up a more diverse pool, because they're out there, and they're usually just one step beyond being a part of the professional industry proper, and you just gotta grab them and pull them in. And there's no downside. There is no downside, because more good actors to choose from just means better casts, better products, better sounding overall shows and games, because you've gone and found all the best people, and you're not limiting yourself to the people that were there just based on having the privilege of being there for a long time. And that is not to say that only white voice actors had that privilege. Obviously, there are some POC voice actors who have been in this industry a long time. Mm-hmm. And that's not to say that no white voice actors will ever struggle to get into the industry proper. Obviously, everyone is going to have their struggles.
I think it's a struggle in general for the industry.
Yes, it is. It is hard.
It is a grind, no matter what.
It is hard to get in. But it's just important that really talented voice actors are not shut out for stupid reasons like the color of their skin or where they come from or who they are, and that we don't lose out on some of what could be the best voices of our next generation by shutting them out for those stupid reasons. The only thing that should keep someone from getting in is if they are not talented or if they're a dick. Those are the only things that should keep people out of this industry.
Just don't be an asshole.
Don't be a jerk.
Otherwise, if they are pleasant and professional and great, they should not be shut out for any other stupid reason. So that's my MO, my mantra. And again, I find it important that I keep learning and that I keep listening and that I don't, get stuck in my own ways, because getting stuck in your ways, regardless of where you are, is bad. Always got to keep it fresh. Always got to keep it evolving. But I feel good about the work that I'm putting out now and the amazing diverse group of people that I'm able to do it with. And I hope that actors who maybe did spin their wheels and quit come back now that things are starting to get better. And I only hope that they keep getting better so that those actors feel empowered to come back, because it sucks, the thought of someone who could have changed the industry or even given just one great performance are gone. That sucks. I don't like it. And I never want it to be the end of someone's story that they gave up for some bullshit reason like being discriminated against. It's
absolutely.
Yeah.
That's such an inspiring take to hear, as an Asian myself. It's just I love I think I've gone into the industry at such a great time where people like you are making such great strides into really normalizing that sort of philosophy of the best should be casted because they are the best. And, diversity is simply a byproduct of finding the best actors for the character. And especially with all these resources out there, like I'm the Voices of Color Discord and various Twitter groups who, specifically are like, hey, we're a resource for if you do fall underneath this certain niche, we will promote you for characters that fall under your niche and just get you out there in the world. And it's such an incredible sight to see and very inspiring. You love to see it. So I think we're just about coming up to the end of our time together.
Wow, already?
I know, it's going by so fast.
It's really flown by. But
Oh my gosh.
It's been nearly an hour and a half, I think. Out. And for a final sort of question for you, if in your long time in the industry, if you had the opportunity to give this sort of interview to another voice actor of your choice, to hear their journey and hear their life and sort of know what they went to and their take on the world, who would you give it to?
Ooh,
Didn't mean to put you on the spot like that.
Oh man, there's so many. You've probably got so many friends who are like, you better say my name.
I know, right? Well, I'm of two minds of it, because it's like, is it one that I would want to exist, or is it one that just I personally would like to hear? Because like one I would really like to exist, and that someone I think should be talked to more is my boss, Amberly Connors. She founded Sound Cadence Studios, and she's the reason I get to impose my casting philosophies onto anything at all. Because if it wasn't for her, I wouldn't have these opportunities. And she made this studio from the ground up. So I think that she should be out there, telling her story. But if it's one that I just personally want to listen to, there's so many voice actors that I grew up with who I'm just like, oh, I'm such a big fan. Like Brian Donovan and Jeff Nimoy and Mona Marshall and Wayne Grayson and Dan Green and all those guys. Those guys. Basically anyone who's ever appeared on Pokemon, Digimon, Yu-Gi-Oh, or Monster Rancher. Those are my guys, or Zoids, or Metabots.
I like how the question was, if there was one, and then Marissa's like,
I was like,
oh
what
my
if
God,
I listed a ton of people?
here's an entire show and 3 more.
And then of course, I would start going like, oh, and all my favorite POC voice actors and all my favorite indie guys and like Gianni Matragrado and Nick Louie, and you can't let me start naming people. I will just keep going forever.
I think what she's trying to say here is that we need to just have one massive Zoom interview with
everybody. No, I mean, I think this kind of thing is awesome. And I love doing like podcasts and interviews like this, because it's just such a great resource for people who want to get into the industry. It's a great way for me to connect with fans instead of, I can't have individual conversations with everybody, but I sure can record a conversation and let people listen to it. And I want to see more actors who like to do this sort of thing do it. So I really hope that you guys, take this and you keep doing it for a long time, and you have lots of cool people on. That's it's one of my favorite things to see, because peeling back the curtain a little bit, especially on an industry like this one that has been so secretive and kind of behind the curtain for so long, I think it's really helpful, especially so that those great new voice actors know what to do and where to go and how to do it. So fingers crossed, gambate, and to much success, to your continued success.
Thank you so much. That's a huge inspiration boost. I'm gonna go cry now. So no. And then I have one final question for Marissa.
Ooh.
Which is 100% optional, of course. So in our podcast, in one of our very first practice podcasts, one of our questions from our homework was if we were mistaken for the opposite sex. And one of my male friends was like, well, no, not usually, but I can do a pretty mean ada. And all of us happened to kind of go through and be like, well, now we all have to do it. And Marissa,
Yes.
would you mind giving us your best ada?
Of course. Ara ara.
Ooh.
Yes.
It's specifically an impression of Alicia Florence, who's a character I played, and she aras non-stop. Because of course, there's also the ara variety, but she's so cute. I always have to do the ara.
That's adorable.
I loved her, and of course, we translated it as my.
My. Oh.
I want to say like 30% of my dialogue on that show was my.
Love that.
Oh, that's amazing. Thank you so much. I can't wait to share that.
Oh, and before we forget, we should probably at some point also tell you where the people can find you if they would like to know.
Yes, definitely.
Yes. So I am at Marissa Lenti on pretty much everything, be it Instagram, Facebook, or Twitter. Twitter is the best place to keep up with me. And let me plug some of the things that I'm doing right now. I just wrapped directing a show called Kageki Shoujo. It's really great, and I hope you'll give it a look. I'm super happy with how it came out. And then coming up, I am going to be directing the dub of Gunbuster, which just got announced, which is a classic mecha. It's Hideki Anno's first directing joint, the Evangelion guy from the 80s. Super cool. Cannot wait for it to come out. We're working with our friends at Discotheque, the same company that we worked with to do Kimono Friends and City Hunter and Galaxy Express. So it's going to be really, really cool. And what am I voicing on this season? This season I am voicing the cat in the Duke of Death and His Maid. And you can check that out on Funimation.
Are you telling me that you got that role and not Moxie?
Surprise. Me and my cat are now competing for cat roles. The difference is that people can direct me in English, and she doesn't understand English, so it's a little bit harder to direct her. She's a little bit more of a diva in the booth, only meowing when she wants to. But yeah, I've been voicing that character, and those episodes come out weekly. It's a simuldub, so you can check it out on Funimation's website. And yeah,
thank you.
Awesome, thanks.
Thank you for letting me plug.
Yeah,
always. Yeah, you gotta
always be plugging.
Thank you. And with that, just for all of our wonderful, the after party listeners out there, please feel free to, if you found this interview helpful, please share it, with friends, family, other people who are interested in this, or maybe just fans of the job in general, or of course anyone out there who loves Marissa just as much as we do. So please do share this around, and thank you so much, Marissa, for being on our podcast today. This was such an incredible educational experience for us, and I hope for a lot of people to now have access to. We really appreciate that.
Of course. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. And thank you once again so much for listening. Everybody, have a wonderful night, and until next time.
Bye-bye.